if you get to the point where you are debating Trump, will you engage in personal attacks? I hope the answer is yes.
No, but I will prosecute the case against 4 more years of Donald Trump, and there's a rap sheet to be prosecuted. Yeah. I think that he has defiled the office of the President of the United States.
You called him a coward, which isn't necessarily fair. I mean, this man almost went to Vietnam were it not for his bone spurs.
No, here's the thing. Here's the thing. The President of the United States has so much power, and in particular in that microphone that she holds.
It's a woman?
Well, that she who should be president holds.
I see.
And what we have seen is that this individual, this president, he, I guess, believes that his power is to beat people down instead of what real power and strength is about, which is lifting people up. And that's why I also call him a coward. You know my background. I was a prosecutor, and I'm going to tell you something about predators. The thing about them is, by their very nature and character and instinct, they prey on the vulnerable. They prey on those they believe to be weak. They prey on those who are in need of help, and often desperate in need of help. And this is the kind of characteristic that we see in this president. And then he embraces the dictators. He embraces Kim Jong-un. He embraces Vladimir Putin. He embraces MBS. And let's be clear about those 3 fellows, right? Which is that on the issue of Russia's interference in the election of the President of the United States, this president prefers to take the word of the Russian president over the word of the American intelligence community on the subject of an American student who was tortured and later died. This president prefers to take the word of the North Korean dictator over the word of the American intelligence community on the subject of a journalist who was assassinated, a journalist who has American credentials. He prefers to take the word of a Saudi prince over the word of the American intelligence community. Who is this guy?
I think he was the host of The Celebrity Apprentice.
Exactly. Yeah. And, he obviously achieved success there. He has obviously achieved very little success here, so he should go back to that. I believe that the American people know that the vast majority of us have so much more in common than what separates us, and the way that I think about my priorities is through the lens of what I call the 3 o'clock in the morning thought, right? Which is when people wake up in the middle of the night with that thought that's been weighing on them. When they're thinking that thought, it is never through the lens of the party with which they're registered to vote. When they're thinking that thought, it is never through the lens of some simplistic demographics and polls to put them in. And for the vast majority of us, when we're thinking that thought, and you know this, I know this well, it has to do with our personal health, the health of our children or our parents. Can I get a job, keep a job, pay the bills by the end of the month, retire with dignity for our students? Can I pay off those student loans for so many families in America? Can I help my family member get off their opioid addiction or their drug addiction? The vast majority of us have so much more in common than what separates us. And if we approach priorities through that lens, I do believe we can see progress. But the first thing that we've got to do is agree also that we are going to reject those people who are trying to sow hate and division among us. And this is the contrast right now, which is where I believe the American people truly are, and then what you're hearing from supposed leaders. And that's why, Jimmy, talking about what's been happening over the last 48 hours, listen, people may not agree with all my policies, people may not vote for me, but I'm going to tell you this. We have got to get to a place where we as Americans agree. We have got to unify as a country around our commonalities, around our collective priorities. We have got to unify. We have got to.
You support Medicare for all?
I do.
Would people be able to still go and get supplemental insurance if they wanted to?
Yes, absolutely.
Is this something that Medicare for all would cost the middle class or the lower middle class, the lower class more with something that would increase taxes?
No, it would actually bring health care to the place where your access to health care is not a function of how much money you have in your back pocket. And, right now we are looking at the fact that we have Medicare for all. And you know where that is? In the emergency rooms of America. And it is too expensive, and it also means that people are getting access to health care when they're in crisis, instead of before then, when we can actually alleviate their pain and extend the quality of their life in a much smarter and more effective way. And then there's this whole argument that people think, well, maybe is this going to mean that I have to worry about not being able to see my doctor. 91% of the doctors in America are in Medicare. And those that are not are mostly pediatricians, and the 9%. And you know why they're not in Medicare? Because Medicare doesn't cover children.
Mm-hmm.
But when we have Medicare for all, that will not be any longer the case, which means that the vast majority of doctors will be in that system, and you can keep your doctor under that system, and it will be that when you walk into that hospital, when you walk into the doctor's office, you don't have to fill out all those forms and give your credit card. You just give your Medicare card, and you walk in, and then you walk out when you're done.
You've been working on a prescription drug plan.
Yes.
In a nutshell, what is that plan?
It's about bringing the cost of prescription drugs down. The pharmaceutical companies have been jacking up prices hand over fist for years. And so what I'm prepared to do is, one, to require that the pharmaceutical companies pay a fair price for drugs. And what that means is looking at what other countries are charging for the same drugs, and then bringing the price down so it'll match the average of what other countries are paying. Because why is it that the United States government is the only one that is allowing its people to pay more for the same drugs that people can get in Canada for half the price?
Many of which we are making.
I know, this is my point. And why isn't the American government standing up? Well, because you have so many people in Washington, D.C. who are in the back pocket of the pharmaceutical companies.
Who's the worst one? Name him.
I've got a list. But also, what I'm prepared to do is this. If we can't get consensus in the Congress about that, and also getting rid of the tax loophole for pharmaceutical companies to advertise on television, right? Because they get tax breaks for advertising on TV, all those advertisements you see.
But how will we learn about mesothelioma if we don't every 4 minutes? Yeah.
But let me tell you, if we can't get Congress to act on that, then what I'm prepared to do as president is take executive action to, one, allow people to buy their drugs from Canada, to also put in place an Attorney General of the United States who will prosecute pharmaceutical companies for predatory practices, and to take the licenses, basically, that the patents that drug companies who have been funded and their research has been government funded, take their patents if they fail to bring prices down to meet the average of what other countries are charging.